looking at the results where we compare again the hierarchical decoding model with the previous approaches like the subword-based translation or also character level translation. I've seen that this approach had been quite useful, especially for Arabic translation, where, as I mentioned before, the morphological translations are highly non-linear, they're discontinuous, and also going from English to Arabic, there is a vast amount of change in the word order. So maintaining the context at the word level and generation character by character, both of these things might have helped to cope with the difficulty in generating words in Arabic. On the other hand, in the other languages, I have seen that the approach is comparable to the subword-based approach. In some cases is higher, in some cases is comparable. So my intuition was that actually still preserving the attention at the word level actually doesn't cope with the difficulty in alignment in such languages where, as I tried to show before, in morphologically rich languages, because of the word level sparsity, the sparsity in the context, it's very difficult to learn alignments at the word level. So there is a high level of sparsity that that might make it difficult for the model to generalize just by relying on the character forms that is learning to compose. So in the final part of the lecture, I would like to just briefly mention my concluding work, where I also try to achieve a segmentation in the vector space to alleviate these problems that I mentioned before, such as the problems with segmentation at the surface level, and to aid the model to achieve a more optimal search space that is more optimal somewhere in between the word level and also the more ambiguous character level search space. So in the next work that I will present, the main idea is to learn latent variables that represent the morphological features of word and to achieve this within the model. So if we try to go back to the example, let's say in Turkish before, inflection in Turkish, and as I try to describe using permutations before, so this is this can be viewed as simply sampling from a category, right? So each word has some morphological features that represent its meaning and its current role in the context, the syntactic role, with accompanied with some features to make it in the put it in the correct form in the sentence. So if you look at what kind of features that it has, for the case of nouns, we see that we have this we have picked this locative feature case to form this specific word, San Francisco'ya. And actually there are some other hidden features that usually we need to pick from when we are forming a noun, like its number. And in some languages, there's also gender. In this case, we don't have it. But in some other languages, picking the gender will also make a difference. And in the case of the verb, we have still two features. One is that it's a singular first person, and the other one is its tense, which is a present tense. So as we can see, there's the forming the word can simply be viewed as a sampling from some multinomial distribution. So if we were to represent each word in terms of two features, one is its lemma, which we assume that is a continuous feature because it has to represent a meaning in the distributed space. And the other ones could be discrete features representing the inflectional features to determine what kind of syntactic role the word has in the given position in the sentence. So something that I have considered when I was designing this model was to determine a set of features, like let's say K features, each of which should represent the existence of a certain inflected form, and that the sampling of these should occur after sampling of the lemma when I'm forming the word, because what kind of features can be included in the word would depend highly on the lemma that I sample. So eventually, the final model would look like an extension of the hierarchical decoder, where in the middle part, we have extended the word level search with a reconstruction, a variational autoencoder that takes the word representation, the hidden state from the word level RNN, and encodes it in terms of this latent variable, which is a lemma and an inflectional features, and simply by composing them and using them to achieve the attention, which really the idea is to just try to learn the hidden states, the word representations, not simply by composing the characters or observing them in context, but using these two types of information to learn the actual distribution of the words in terms of this smaller latent variables. So going back to the experiments where I have focused on the really sparse language pairs, and I have seen that this approach can really make the hierarchical model work much better. And in cases of, for instance, Arabic and Turkish, I have further improvements by in the translation accuracy. So if we take a closer look at the model and see if this encoder, let's say especially the discrete part, if it is indeed encoding morphological information in order to generate really improve the translation of the inflected forms that we were aiming for. And we see that by simple ablation studies where we might freeze the model after sampling a lemma, let's say, and we can change the gate values, the feature values, and the decoder would simply generate the different surface forms belonging to the same level. So it confirms that it is indeed encoding the morphological features in the model. So in overall, in my research, I have concluded that linguistic information, using it to design architectures that have these inductive biases, these structurally biased models, can be very useful, especially for low resource settings where we have problem for generalization because we have limited data, but also in cases of languages like Turkish, where even if you have high amounts of data, these languages can still be considered low resource simply because there's always an increasing sparsity with the increasing of data, because most words are never observed or observed only once in context. So the addition of data doesn't necessarily reduce the sparsity. And also in terms of efficiency and the capacity requirements, I find this direction to be more promising to achieve more efficient architectures, computationally less costly. So future work that I am also interested in is to design models that deploy feed-forward architectures to achieve more faster decoding.